Hello, everyone. The picture you see is starting to make the rounds on the internet. Yes, it is another leaked toy, and this one doesn't even seem to be fully assembled just yet, or it's exceptionally awkwardly positioned. Either way, what we have before us is a black repaint of Perceptor from Studio Series with a bright purple Decepticon emblem on the belly, and this means one thing. We know Hasbro, they need to get every remold and repaint out that they can, or at least they try to, because capitalism. But when you do a character like Perceptor, you're left with precious few options, meaning if they're going to get a reuse, there really is only one place to go, and that is a character named Magnificus. So, this is something of an obscure character to begin with. So, for starters, let's just go over a little bit here. We'll go over like who is Magnificus. So, just on a pure base level, Magnificus was, as a toy, an e-hobby repaint of the original Perceptor figure done in black. eHobby did black repaints at the time. That's just what they did. In this case, though, it was replicating the original Microman color scheme that the toy had. So it was something of a throwback, but making it a Decepticon now, which also means that the original toy accurate head has now kind of become iconic for Magnificus instead of its original owner, Perceptor. Kind of funny how things like that work out. Nevertheless, it was supposed to just be a one-off exclusive. However, there's been very few Perceptors over the years, but generally a black repaint does get made at some point. In the case of Magnificus, if we look at him as a character, so in the story that eHobby came up with for his bio, he is a high-ranking military council for the Decepticons. So high-ranking that he had rivals that vied for his position and eventually ousted him from the Decepticons, sentencing him to the fighting pit arenas where he gained considerable combat ability. The idea behind him is he is this brilliant military mind, and he does represent like the evil science behind the Decepticons, but he's also extremely capable in combat thanks to basically his outcasting. He's not with the Decepticons in story. He bears a Decepticon emblem and eventually would fall into a secondary cast of Decepticons under a completely different leader. I'm trying to remember the name. I'm trying to remember. Scratch. Oh, it's such a weird name. Scratch is a whole other thing. We'll do something to cover that later. For now, let's focus on like what the character is. Okay. So what the character to me is a potential for a gap to be filled in the Decepticon ranks that we've never really seen properly filled before. Let me run this by you, just for instance. How long was it before the Decepticons had a medic? This is a war, whether it's good or evil side. This is a war, and war means you need people to, do repairs and whatnot. You need medics. On the Autobot side, we had medics since day one, and Ratchets always come in handy. On the Decepticon side, they get routinely trounced, blown up, defeated, scrapped up. Like, they're like, you've seen Decepticons flying off looking like junk piles. They're usually seen repairing themselves or they're repaired off screen. It wasn't until Transformers Prime before we actually got to see a Decepticon medic, and that was Knockout. And Knockout is one of those characters that I'm happy has kind of survived his original fiction to come into other forms. He's been, we got to see him in comic books, and he's got a new toy coming out. I'm happy when characters like that hold a unique position manage to escape their original fiction and become part of the like greater Transformers mythos. Knockout certainly deserved it. So I digress. Why am I doing this? Because Magnificus kind of fills a similar role, potentially, if you were to use the character right. So obviously, you're going to lean toward a scientist or an inventor with him because he's based off of a microscope. He's an evil counterpart to Perceptor in the most literal way. More military focused, certainly. So you ever think about how Megatron comes up with all of these crazy death rays and weapons of the week in the original G1 cartoon, or how he finds out about all these different power sources on the planet, or, it's a lot, isn't it? And obviously, he could be taking a proactive approach and doing it himself. Generally, when something is created to defeat the Autobots or drain power from the Earth, it is just whoever is most convenient to the writing process at the time. So it's usually like Shockwave, Soundwave, Megatron himself, or they don't even bring up who came up with the Death Ray that week. There is just a Death Ray there. So Magnificus could actually fill that role. He could be the weaponsmith of the Decepticons. He could be the dedicated inventor. Beyond that, like, I don't, offhand, there really aren't any prominent ones for Decepticons. I have to go to the Predacons and Tarantulas to get to anyone like that is like prominent. I know there's thousands of Transformer characters. You scour, you go into the more obscure books, etc. You're gonna find plenty of Decepticons who make things for Megatron. That's not my point. My point is significance. My point is notoriety and focus. And I feel like Magnificus would have that position on lock if a writer would use him properly. Now, if we want to stay true to his e-hobby roots, then there is also ways of utilizing this character in the exact same way. Except in this case, it would probably be someone who is also loyal and trying to prove himself to Megatron, but also somewhat scheming and conniving himself, potentially power hungry, and would want to usurp Magnificus and take his position amongst the Decepticons. And this is not like a Starscream thing. Actually, I'm thinking Shockwave. If we want to kind of take, like the power hungry one from the comic books, mix it with the super loyal one from G1 and animated, there you go. And that actually gets you closer to like a Transformers Prime depiction of Shockwave in the end. So if he's the one that ousts Magnificus and banishes him from the Decepticons, now you retain the character's original story while still giving him a little bit more meat. He's not just this military counsel to a random group of Decepticons on another planet. He was right there with Megatron, and through Shockwave's conniving, has either convinced Megatron to banish him, or has done the banishing himself, and just kind of let Megatron believe that Magnificus has turned traitor. You have an aspect in there to not only give him a unique position in the universe, but also fit him right in there in the G1 stories, and actually kind of explain a few things that kind of get lost in the overall fiction. So he's a character that can not only fill a gap, but also explain a few plot holes. But that's not quite the end for Magnificus, because there's another twist to this. There's one other twist that we have not considered. The other twist revolves around Gamete. This is the partner figure that he was packed with the Eve hobby figure. Gamete is based on the Ganymede story in Greek mythology, and there are parallels to it in his story with Magnificus, but that gets into really creepy territory. The ancient Greeks had some interesting things they accepted in their society that we will not get into because I don't want to be demonetized. Regardless, there are some parallels to it, but that's really not what we're kind of drawing from here. So, in the original toy line, this was a. If I get the next photo here, he was a repainted Microman figure from the 2004 run of Microman. Completely original character. They just wanted someone that could actually use the tank mode of Magnificus, because in this fiction they used the tank mode as his actual primary transformation, and then the microscope was kind of incidental. Right, so kind of an inverse of the typical Perceptor, which is actually a smart way to go about it. So, the storyline behind Gamete, however, is a little bit different. Gamete is a prince of his planet. That exists in a subatomic inner space, so like a microverse planet. He was in a similar situation. So he was he was in the middle of a power struggle amongst his family. He was going to be executed, so he couldn't take the throne. And then Magnificus discovers the planet and rescues him before his execution, basically by using his abilities to enlarge him out into the overall macroverse. So the two are completely loyal to each other. Gamete is completely devoted to Magnificus for saving his life. They are both on this quest of revenge against the Decepticons. So, what's interesting to me is it's never quite explained why Magnificus took an interest in a microplanet in the first place, nor is it really explained why he would save this subatomic humanoid. You know, because it's a character who betrayed the Decepticon, who left the Decepticons not by choice, but still carries the Decepticon ideals. Like, this isn't a hero character, right? So why would you rescue a fleshling? It's never really explained, and it's just in a way like it's like to show you that he found a kindred spirit, because they were both exiled for basically being too good for too good for their own good. But it does add this interesting wrinkle that at some level that Magnificus actually can value life outside of Cybertronian life. And that's a wrinkle you can kind of play with, if, like in the right setting, you could pair him up with someone like Thundercracker, for instance, who in tradition, like in his original intended biography, does not want to hurt humans or the Earth. Like, he does not feel good about it. He's only loyal to Megatron out of fear. Someone as powerful and influential as Magnificus behind him, he might not stay a Decepticon for very long. You have that kind of potential there. And then you have this shared connection between the fact that they actually do value organic life, in a way. If you want to play that card at all, Gamete is actually not integral to Magnificus as a character. You can use it to provide a wrinkle and an added layer of depth, but admittedly it's not the easiest one to use, right? So what if we just take his later depictions where he's just completely solo? All right, so what you have here isn't a good guy per se. He's definitely not a good guy. He's not amongst the Decepticons, but he still absolutely carries Decepticon ideals. He's just out for revenge. I see him more as a Punisher type. He is not a good person, but he is turning his ill deed toward worse people. You could depict him that way. Where he is just on a quest for vengeance against those who wronged him. And it just so happens that by eliminating some of them, he's actually doing some good. That part, the heroism is just happenstance at that point. But it still stands to reason you can't wage a war alone, especially against an entire army, especially an army as strong and large as Megatron. So you got to have backup. You got to be able to do something with him. So what do you do? What do you do when you are this ousted Decepticon who may not necessarily, who has the combat skills, but may need a little bit more muscle behind you in order to enact revenge or even just survive? Well, Magnificus, I have just the partner for you. And it's my boy, Blitzwing, another ousted Decepticon. Not because he was usurped for position, but because his morals outweighed those of his leadership at the time. He is like, he is, and of course, like, Blitzwing never really did have that full hero conversion. He couldn't follow, he turned down Rodimus because he can't follow Autobot ideals, so he chooses to stay neutral. He is friendly with the Autobots only because of his deeds in Five Faces of Darkness, and because they keep him alive and protected from Galvatron. But someone like Magnificus watching his back, he can provide the muscle where Magnificus provides the brains and the tech. Now you've got a duo. Now you've got a duo that can survive out on their own. Might need a few more here and there, but especially when you get into the realm of Galvatron, you're going to find plenty of Decepticons willing to jump ship, and if only to save their own tailpipe in the end. So that is what we have for Magnificus. No idea how he's going to play a role in anything right now, especially since we're waiting for the new comics to find out any new fiction for any characters popping up these days. But this is just kind of how I would use him. I see a spot for him in G1 fiction. I see a spot where he could do something that we don't really have for existing Decepticons. And if you want to stay true to his original origins, there are definitely places for him to exist there too, alliances for him to make. And no matter what, I think Magnificus serves as an opportunity to splinter the Decepticons and create some interesting dynamics and fractures in the actual faction. There's a lot of potential to a character like that, and this is just scratching the surface of it. So that's my look at a character that is woefully underused and does have a lot of potential. How close am I on base? Like, this is not like a full what if storyline. This is just kind of like where I would put him in the universe, and hopefully somewhere out there you agree with it. And if you don't, let me know that too. Until then, thank you guys for watching, and I hope I will see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.